Welcome, dear viewers. My name is James Munyaneza, and this is The Context by The New Times. Today's conversation will align with the context we are in. As a country, we're just emerging from 1 week official commemoration of genocide against the Tutsi, but as a nation, we're still commemorating for a total of 100 days leading up to the liberation of July 4th. And as a country, this is a moment of deep reflection. It's a moment of drawing lessons from what has happened in this country, but also comparing that to what is going on today, relating that to the dynamics in this region. Now, on this program today, we'll be interrogating the context of this region in a sense of, as a country that has been going through nation building, fighting genocide denial, as a country that is faced with the insecurity. How do we make sense of what it is that is ongoing, that's going on in this region, especially in the eastern parts of Congo, where there is a raging conflict, a conflict that is linked to what happened in Rwanda in 1994, and that's the genocide against the Tutsi, the perpetrators, when they lost in July 1994. The bulk of this group, the majority of them, crossed into the Congo, then Zaire. That led to the insurgency wars of late 1990s and early 2000s, leading up to eventually Rwanda deploying into Congo in what we now know as Congo 1, that led to the fall of Mobutu Sese Seko, and then millions of Rwandans returned home. But some radicals, thousands of them, scattered within the Congolese communities. Some went to other countries as far as Congo-Brazzaville, across the whole region. But later, we saw a new trend. The Congolese government then of Laurent Desire Kabila remobilizing these same forces that committed genocide in Rwanda and empowering them, arming them. And until today, this force, we know it as FDLR, of course with different splinter groups carrying different names, but the origin is the same. The intention has been identified to be the same. It's a group that has been blacklisted as a terrorist organization, both by the UN and the US, and identified, labeled as a negative group, armed group, by regional countries. Today, we're going to be diving deep into this subject. And with me to break down what the situation is in terms of genocide ideology in this region, particularly in Eastern Congo, and the role of FDLR and its supporters, is Dr. Alexis Mvuka. Dr. Alexis Mvuka is a respected scholar, researcher, writer, regional analyst, who has dedicated his time and his career, if you like, to researching what is going on in Eastern Congo. He has done academic papers, he's published a lot of work, he's done research work. Dr. Mvuka, you've published, you've done two masters in conflict-related subjects and a PhD as well, focusing on Congo. So you are an authority on this subject. Welcome to the context, Dr. Alex.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for honoring our invitation and for being our first guest, by the way, on this program. Now, let's dive in, and we will start with your best of your research, of course, that you've done on this subject. I'll start by asking how prevalent, how serious is the issue of genocide ideology in this region, particularly in Eastern Congo today, and to what extent has this affected the security apparatus or security situation in Eastern Congo?
Thank you. It's really great question. You mentioned about region. Already, we're talking about more than one country, and really looking at how genocide ideology has emerged and has evolved. I would say, to go straight to your question, I would say it is at its peak time. It is time bomb. The DRC crisis has been there for a very long time. And somehow, because of so many dynamics, so many ramifications of the major problem, which is genocide ideology, somehow there is a limited response or alarmed or alert to see the real issue, which is genocide ideology in the region. So if you remove any other consequences of that genocide ideology, you remove any other conflict dynamics that has evolved for the last 30 years, then you find this elephant in the room. Probably should not use elephant in the room, but this huge virus that is not treated, but is actually given an environment and the right conditions to grow. It is no longer kind of like what we say in French, pépinière. It's like a really fertile ground to grow crops. It isn't any longer there. It has grown. It is its maturity, and it is in its work. So let me illustrate with a comparison to the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. You remember that there was a the phenomenon of Ibzisto.
Accomplices.
Yes, accomplices, or prisoners of physical futures. You didn't have to be criminal. You were criminal by your look. You were criminal by your ethnicity. We have seen that in the DRC for the last 7 years. There are today 1,000 people who are imprisoned simply because who they are. So people are born in crime. Secondly, as many months before the genocide against the Tutsi, we saw no state actors being sanctified, became mainstreamed within the government. Those signs, we know them. In fact, actually in the DRC, it is multiplied. Here we had Impuza Mugambi, we had Interahamwe, we had so many no-state actors who have been sanctified, became normalized, became part of the army. In fact, they were triple the army number. So we are seeing the same phenomenon in a much more huge intensity.
So you're saying in the current situation in Eastern Congo,
yes,
you have groups, you would say, basically they are the Interahamwe,
yes,
of back in 1990s in Rwanda, Impuza Mugambi.
Yes, you have in fact all of them. In fact, all of them are still there. They have not changed. They have not been disarmed, and they managed to find a space
At
to
least the
grow.
Wazalendos.
Yes, Wadalendo context. When we talk about FDLR's group, you have to look at who else actors, state or no state actors, share the same view.
Okay.
If they share the same view, then the definition of FDLR has to expand. It is about, do they share the same view, the same vision? The vision is to restore a Hutu supremacist in the region. The idea is to exterminate Tutsis, which is the same as what was during 1994 in Rwanda. So I've started by looking at the no state actors, but also how the conditions that the region has provided, and then the no state actors, which I have multiplied. You have Wazalendo, you have FDLR, you have all those groups that were in Rwanda.
Just to have an idea, just to give us a sense of how important Wazalendo is in the current context. How big is Wazalendo? I know it's, there's so many my groups that were brought together, and then they recruited the other civilians. And how big is this militia?
There's so many official reports that suggested that it's over 200 armed groups.
Over 200 armed groups, yeah.
Yes.
So they were brought together, most of these ones?
Yes, they're brought together. They are supported by the government. There was a UN statement suggesting that 85% of ammunitions used by these groups are provided by the army. So again, you see the parallel to what was going on during the genocide.
Do you have an idea on the numbers? How many?
Numbers, it's difficult to tell because they do change quite a lot in different times. They recruit from their local communities. Yeah. But you're talking about a number that's more than the army of the DRC. So together with the army, you could be talking about 500,000. So
500,000 yes. Armed men and women.
Yes, exactly. And this is, again, I often talk about how you alluded to the security in the region, instability. Something that I see as a time bomb is when you provide ammunition to no state actors and you don't control them, you don't have control over them, is the recipe to anything. They recruit by themselves independently, they recruit from the communities, they change alliances, they network, but they share one thing. They don't have any political grievance except the genocide view. They need to get rid of this kind of people because of where they come from, their look, their language. That's their statement. That's what they share.
So this is just more than the group that is supporting the Congolese government in the war against the FC, M23, and whoever else they are fighting against. But you're saying that essentially at the heart of the ideology of this group and the motivations that behind it, its creation, that the biggest of them all is actually the genocide ideology.
Yes, that's what they share. And that's really answer your question. And I was trying really to look at factually, if we say that is really at the peak time, let's look at the other genocide cases, how they evolved, and what was the peak time. The peak time was on April 7th, when it didn't start April 7th, but when violence and the killings started.
That's in Rwanda.
In Rwanda.
1994.
So, yes, that's what really the top of the peak time, because it has been being prepared for many years. Yeah. So if you look at the Congo situation, in 2023, for the first time, these no-state actors became part of the government, exactly how Interahamwe and Ndibuza Mugambi were. So that should be alarming anybody. When a government assimilate no-state actors as big as 200 groups, provide them with ammunitions, and sharing the same vision, not to do with some kind of the so-called territorial integrity or defense. If it's about defending the borders, as they say, why would they be in the middle of the country or following the communities because of their identities? They should be at the border. Mm-hmm. They say, well, we are here to defend the country from invasion of Rwanda. Therefore, they should be at the border. All those 500,000, they should be at the border. But they are not. They are following communities inside the countries, in cities, burning people alive, lynching people. We've seen the phenomenon of cannibalism. The idea of cannibalism is not a love of or taste of human flesh. It is about hatred. It is about even a body without life can be hurt. There is a language of genocide. There's a language of ideology. That's why we say it's an ideology. The ideology has to have justification, has to have narratives, has to have a philosophy, has to have a plan, has to have a system, has to have backup for the country. Because a genocide is le crime de l'État. So when we talk about genocide, we have to look at the responsibility of the state.
Of the state.
Yes.
So, Doctor, thank you. Now, genocide, of course, is never a spontaneous event. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen out of nowhere. It's planned, carefully planned. Mm-hmm. There are stages.
Yes.
Scholars have told us there are 10 stages.
That's right.
In this country, went through all that before 1994. And Rwandans know more than anybody else how people were dehumanized, Tutsi were dehumanized, given all sorts of names like,
cockroaches,
snakes, rats, whatever, to try to make it easier in the minds of the other,
the killers,
their compatriots and the killers to actually find it easier to exterminate these people, to kill these people.
Yes.
So do we have the equivalent of these kind of names, these labels, these in terms of ethnic labels, whatever, the dehumanizing identities that they give to these people in Congo? Do you have this?
Very much so. Very much so. In fact, with much more channels to communicate those words across diaspora, it has become transnational. I guess that's slightly the difference we are seeing today. It's the same situation, which was still extreme during genocide against Tutsi in Rwanda. And we are seeing the same rhetorics. There was a foreign affairs minister of Laurent Kabila who, his infamous speech talking about vermins, so basically snakes with a poison. Tutsis are poison, and the snakes, they have to be examined methodically. That's what his speech. And he called people using the same narratives to go out and pick up anything they have, anything their positions.
So when Patrick Muyaya, the spokesperson of the Congolese government, says, "Oh, this is a Tutsi poison," it is something that has been planned.
That's right.
You can deliberate. It's part of that broad plan that you're explaining.
Yes, I think the consistency in the narratives. Even if things are not written, they become a culture. They become an attitude. They become embedded within the mindset of people. In Rwanda, there was written. You remember the 10 Commandments. There was written justification, the paper publications. In the DRC, the same. We had the civil society that really provide the explanations. What do we see as externalizations of genocide ideology? It is coming from written papers. Civil societies for the last 30 years have produced tons of writings. Human rights, local human rights organizations. So journalists becoming part of the situations. We've seen academics writing the same situations. We've seen President Tshisekedi inviting conspiracy theorists who you are more welcomed in the DRC if you are talking about such things. You get rewarded. If you are minister and using the word cockroaches, using the word insect, microbe, virus, snakes, and as you said, the minute you use a caricature of animalizing your victims, it is a green light. You reduce them as people with no pain, no suffering, immortal.
And then there's this other aspect as well, to actually now turn around and make these people your victims, the victims actually of your agenda, to now you turn them into the bad guys.
Yes.
You make them look like they're the ones with the ill intentions, bad intentions to kill this, the rest of the country.
That's right.
To kill their fellow citizens.
Yes.
And from testimonies we've had, of course, we're in this period of Kwibuka commemoration here in Rwanda. We had the testimonies, people saying how the people that were organizing the genocide and committing crimes and killing people were turned around and they were blaming the victims and actually now sowing fear in the rest of the community, in the masses. Yes. That if you don't now act fast, these ones are going to finish you.
Yes.
And you're seeing this in Congo.
Very much so. It is a process to the point, it's a process of accusing the victim, to the point victims think themselves that they're criminals. To that point, because it has been very long time. Somehow I often say in my analysis that this pressure of hatred it leads to a point where the perpetrators are very, very aggressive or brutal and responsive to the victims, saying, you should not resist to be killed. You should not resist. You remember the phenomenon of Bisesero, where people, and other places, where people, really the victims, decided that we would be killed, but we would better try to support ourselves, defend ourselves. But that situation, whenever it happened in the DRC, somehow there's a huge anger, there's a huge mobilization from political cycle and population and the armed groups. How dare you? Do you resist to be killed? And if you are true Congolese, why don't you help us?
Rise up and
help us, A, to head to Rwanda, 2, help us to kill you.
Okay.
So, so that the dehumanization has different stages. What we said about, calling people animals. And there's another stage where you reduce them to nothing and you punish them for resisting to be killed. And how dare they? They can be talking about, they have right to a life.
Maybe before we pivot to the origins of all this, it's important to state that we have seen these statements coming from top officials. Aria mentioned Patrick Muyaya, the Congolese government spokesperson and Minister for Communication, but also that case of General
General
Sylvain
Kenge, yes.
Kenge, who came out and said things that we used to know from
Yes.
our history here.
Yes.
Targeting
some officials, yes.
Tutsi women, and saying how they are traitors, and basically saying nobody should do, no Congolese should do marry into these people. So you're saying there is a pattern, and this clearly is something that has been planned to intoxicate, to manipulate the population.
That's right.
Even where somebody didn't see any problem, maybe just staying neutral, if you like, but you now have motivation to take a side, and they say this is patriotism.
Yes.
And that's what they have called Wazalendo.
That's
Wazalendo
right.
means the patriots.
Yes. Defend over territory of the country territory.
So let's come to, again, this is of course a complex situation, complicated situation.
Yes.
One might ask, when did these things begin? When did we start seeing genocide ideology manifesting in eastern parts of Congo, in Congo for that matter? Was this after 1994 in Rwanda, after the forces that committed genocide here in Rwanda arrived in Congo? Was this even potentially even before the 1994?
In terms of ideology, I often say that FDLR arrived in the DRC before FDLR arrived in the DRC. I don't know, it sounds complicated, but... so
FDLR, the ideology of FDLR
yes.
arrived in DRC.
Yes, before the FDLR, the fighters.
Because also genocide ideology knows no borders.
Exactly.
It's like a smoke. It knows no sovereignty. No territorial integrity.
That's right. That's right. I think that borders in Africa are very new already. And two, borders are no wall, are no physical wall. And we live in an area where it's fluid. And then if you go to what you just said, genocide ideology doesn't have a border, doesn't seek a visa, doesn't cross, at the custom. It doesn't need to do that. So you already have, going back to your question, where it all began. I think we often forget that this is a region that's been colonized as one country. So that was the point. The three countries were under one authority.
That's Congo, Rwanda,
Rwanda, Congo, Urundi.
Okay.
And that, people forget that. And in fact, actually, that's an answer to so many vile comments.
So it goes back to, again, the
colonial times. Yes, colonial times, the Belgium.
Colonial Belgium period.
That's right, exactly. So even from the borders creation before the Belgian, we know that around here, they were not only around here, the whole Africa, there were artificial borders. They were new, the artificial borders, and African still really consider themselves in context of cultural and linguistic identities. Let me not go that area, but I go to your question. From beginning, this area was governed by one country. In 1959, this is no long time ago, Kigali, there were Congolese police.
In the capital of Kigali? We had Congolese police.
There were Congolese police.
They were here to fight on the side of the colonial administration.
Yes.
To reinforce colonial rules and policies.
Of course, as the same country, as the administration, as the same country. Yes.
Okay.
And you have Astrida as university, which was a part of University of Lebanon in Kinshasa. So when there is
Astrida, that's the University of Rwanda now.
Yes, University of Rwanda now. So when we hear rhetoric such as, why only Rwanda? Why only Rwandophones? Why only Tutsis in Eastern Congo? And Congo has 9 borders. Well, there was never 3 countries such as Congo, Brazzaville, Angola, and Rwanda. No, there was never Burundi, Central African Republic, and Uganda. There was never that. So you have to look at the particularity already in terms of administration, colonial administration. These are three countries that were managed as one.
I think you bring out something very fundamental that many analysts probably don't even pay attention to: the historical fact that Rwanda, Congo, and Burundi
Yes.
were essentially one country.
Yes.
Under Belgian rule.
Yes. Same identity, ethnic identity policy were exactly used in both those three countries. You remember about the identity card that the post-colonial rule under Kaibanda kind of installed. This was coming from the whole narratives of Belgium, of measuring nose, measuring body.
Did the same happen, let's say, in Congo?
In Eastern Congo, was in different ways, but it was kind of around the customary right. But a similar context, they deported Tutsi kings, exactly same as they did with the Mwami Musinga in Rwanda. He was initially deported in Ruzizi area for 7 years, and later he was, this is not a coincidence. Why he was deported in Katanga, in Nivura, in Moba. Initially, he was taken in his South Kivu, and the Belgians realized this is a kind of his own people. He's going to be kind of restarting again.
Musinga, this was the Rwandan king.
Yes.
Who stood up against, colonialists.
Yes.
And they basically deposed him.
Yes.
And they installed his son.
Yes.
Rudahigwa.
Yes.
You're saying them exiling him in Congo, it was basically
going in the same room.
They was
basically
moving him from this room to the other room.
Yes. It's their territory.
And that's their territory. Saying that the divisive politics,
the same politics
that were being played out here, yes, committed here or conducted here by the Belgian colonials,
yes,
were manifesting as well in Congo, probably in Burundi as well.
Yes, in Burundi, same situation. Okay. In Congo, in fact, in South Kivu especially, it was literally stereotype. They say, well, these are same people we've seen in Rwanda, and therefore we need to remove their kings, the chief. He was deported in the middle of nowhere in the Lulenge area. In North Kivu, all chiefdom of Tutsi people, they were removed. In fact, they had to do replacement populations. They brought people such as Bakumu, who are in Goma today, in Nyiragongo. Bakumu people were coming from other places, in Lubutu, in the Kindu area. So it's literally to kind of change the demography of the area so that the change in transformations can be less the problem.
So, and in your recent,
I think maybe to extend, that's number one, where the genocide ideology has come from. You can see the manipulation of ethnicity in those three countries. Secondly, is I talk about narratives, the colonial narratives. They have written about Hamithic hypothesis, talking about Tutsis come from Abyssinia, they come from Horn of Africa. There are others. So all these narratives, the colonial imported concepts such as the Bantu, Nilotics, Hamitic people. Those have been used during the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. During the RTLM used to kind of try to translate those narratives. We've seen some anthropological writings talking about, refugees talking about the Kihutu language. We were others. We were not Banyarwanda. This is a name that we've been given. And there is a lot of contradiction. If a minority of a group has arrived after you and somehow dominated you to the point they picked up their language, the local language, if they are dominators, therefore they will dominate with their own language. So it does not make sense. Say, well, we spoke this language, but the dominator came and changed our name, but nevertheless took our language. So anyway, I don't want to complicate the situation. I'm trying to show the narratives, the colonial narratives.
No, I think it makes a lot of sense. Now, it has helped me actually also understand what one FDR officer who returned recently. He just mentioned Kihutu language, and he said that FDR and their politicians convinced the local communities in Eastern Congo. Those they call the Hutu. Sorry, those they call the Hutu, that actually they speak, that their language is Kihutu, that they share that language with the Hutu from Rwanda, and they actually started to even manipulate a few words to create that language of Kihutu. But now you actually brought it out very clearly that the platform was the same. The belligerents, the colonialists had laid the same platform across this region, the three countries that we're talking about today, and that the ground was actually ready, if you like, in terms of this ideology permeating through the local communities in Eastern Congo. It was not something new.
No.
Okay.
Definitely nothing new. Even during 1994 or after 1994, genocide against Tutsi, when I look at the demography of refugees, where people fled to, in Tanzania, there were about 400 to 500,000 people. In Uganda, about 10,000. In Burundi, about 25. I think Uganda 25, Burundi 10,000. In Congo, 1.5 million. Triple people who went to Tanzania. You could say, demography in eastern part of Rwanda and southern part, that's where, there's the kind of like a concentration of populations. You could say, maybe that can justify why 500 to Tanzania. But for me, I don't see that as a random. Congo was offering the welcoming environment. There was a turquoise French army that had secured the southern part zone as
southwestern part of Rwanda.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the French intervention force.
Yes.
1994, yeah.
As a retreat area in Congo had offered everything.
Then you had a welcoming government over in Congo.
Exactly.
Remember the government of Mobutu had actually tried to
support.
deployed
army
to support the government of Habyarimana against the RPA.
Exactly.
So the other side, I think, was more welcoming to in the eyes of the genocidal machinery, the regime at the time.
Yes.
And of course, you see now how, literally they carry with them millions of these of innocent people.
That's right.
Of Rwandans into the Congo.
Exactly.
And because of the work of the colonialists, the belligerent colonialists, it was easier for them to integrate. So are you saying that this ideology, maybe before we pivot, are you saying this ideology to an extent has actually permeated through the layers of, the different layers of Congolese community in villages, in towns and cities, because of all these things that we've talked about, all this background, that it has even become, in some cases, very difficult, where an FDLR combatant has mixed up with people you can't even tell who is who.
Yeah,
there's a lot of intermarriage, but also this ideology that you're talking about. So then there's a chance that even in Wazalendo, the militia supporting the government of Congo, that a good number could have links with FDLR or their family.
I think the whole idea of disarming FDLR is utopic if you don't disarm Wazalendo, because they are interconnected. If you don't disarm the political thought, which is about genocide ideology. The whole idea that we are aiming to change regime in Kigali simply because it is, for them, it was a Tutsi regime. And if you don't dismantle all those three pillars, how would you be getting rid of what has caused security instability in the region? But security instability is one thing, is a fracture. You can be able to mobilize regional actors and get rid of it. But this is a smoke, a virus of a genocide that's much more complex. So going back to the comment you started with, 80% of combatants, Army, ex-FAR, and Interahamwe, they went to the DRC. I've mapped different places where they went. In North Kivu area, by the way, there were about over 40 refugee camps, but we know only 2. We often, in the news, we often talk about Mugunga and Kibumba. But there were about 42 refugee camps. 42 refugee camps. Yes, in Eastern Congo. And
close to the Rwandan border, by the way.
Cross over the Rwandan border. You may remember that time, the whole debate with the new Rwanda government asking the UN that you need to remove these individuals away from our borders. DRC, ex-Zaire, Mobutu, refused completely, to the point he was in conflict with his Prime Minister, Kengo Wadondo. Kengo Wadondo, who didn't know the game, he's the Prime Minister, he's saying, why can't we remove these individuals to 150 kilometers? And Mobutu said, no, you should not get involved in such a situation. Because for him, it was at the end of almost his regime. The whole power who've been supported, the power that have been supporting him, they were no longer supportive of him. He was looking for sympathy of France, and he realized that he can start a new war with Rwanda. But that sounds simplistic, but he already had the same ideology of fighting or getting rid of Tutsis. Okay. So he wanted to mobilize all those 80% of the combatant who were around. Basically, they were not disarmed, and they were provided fertile ground, the communities, the support of the people. The churches made an announcement. Civil society made an announcement. We need to welcome these individuals. Radios were there to support. The Radio Agatasha, that were coming really from the link with RTLM.
The NGO industry.
The NGOs, complex. The whole NGO complex, they were supporting them. And from that time, nothing has ever changed to diffuse the situation. So imagine from that point, 30 years until today, what happened to those people? You have a population where they can recruit from. Personally, I estimate that there are about 500,000 Rwandan who never returned home. They are in Eastern Congo.
500, half a million?
For 500,000 of Rwandan people assimilated in Eastern Congo population. So those are where these individuals recruit from. So maybe to land on something you have
just
talked
hold
about.
it there though, before you leave that point. So you're saying 500,000 of potential FDLR recruits.
Yes, they live in Eastern
Congo.
Yes.
So and this, coming when we keep hearing people saying, "Oh, but FDLR is a small force; it's a few thousand."
They are old. They are old.
They pose no threat. But you're saying, aside from the fact that now they have been, the FDLR itself has been reinforced and remobilized and armed and all by the government in Congo.
Yes,
they even have, a constituency, if you like, or a group where they can recruit from, and this group is as strong as 500,000 people.
And I think even 500,000 is really simplistic because they have transformed the society. So if we are talking about FDLR working in partnership with the army, with armed groups, so armed groups coming from local populations, so that 500,000 you can multiply in 3 or 4, because the population itself is supportive of the same idea.
Oh, okay. Okay.
The local population.
Even the natives.
The native are also, supportive of the idea. Yeah. In fact, something which I find that we talk about denial of genocide against the Tutsi during the commemoration. In South Kivu, in the capital of South Kivu, Bukavu. Well, I would say probably in North Kivu too, in many leaders, many leaders there. They have never acknowledged there was a genocide in Rwanda. They have not. The first denialist is not just the West and the writings we've seen from scholars. The first denialist in the mass are in Congo, in Eastern Congo. So we've seen, even during the commemoration, what we call in French, banalisation. So really a complete lack of acknowledgement. I've interviewed, I can give this anecdotal story. I've interviewed a very influential leader, religious leader. He's told me that, look, here we live here at the border with Rwanda, and since RPF took over in Rwanda, we became very prosperous because we used to get our goods in the western side of the country. And because of lack of infrastructure, it was costly. And since after the regime of Habyarimana, the eastern part became open. We have access now to Mombasa, we have access to Dar es Salaam, and our minerals can transit to Kigali. It used to be Bujumbura or other places, but now business environment is much more good, stable. And you can see how we have flourished. But despite that, we will never forgive RPF.
Why?
Despite all those benefits, economic interests, despite all that they have killed our president. And I was, who? Mobutu? No. Our president was Habyarimana. So I was shocked. Okay. And that really reminded me.
He comes from Kinyarwanda speaking?
No, necessarily, no. He comes from Bashi tribe. So it tells
just to set the record straight.
Yes.
The president is referring to his Habyarimana Juvenal, who was brought down in a plane crash, 1994. The investigations that were conducted showed that he was actually brought down by missiles sent from areas controlled by his own army. So they were extremists.
Yes.
From the different reports that we read, they were extremists within his army.
Within his own army,
yes. Not like the idea of peace talks and power sharing possibilities with RPF.
That's right.
And also they wanted to use that as a trigger for genocide.
Exactly.
As an excuse to start now genocide. I just wanted to
yes. And that's really right. Yes. There was a huge opposition to the whole process.
So these people on our borders in Congo, who are Congolese essentially.
Congolese.
They don't speak even
Kinyarwanda. No.
They regarded Habyarimana
as their own president as well. Yes. And they believed in his political vision. They believe in the genocide ideology. What
did Habyarimana do to get that level of support?
I think again that's something else we is less written about. At that time, genocide ideology again was operational, but behind the operation of it, it was the government, the regime that committed genocide against Tutsi. In North Kivu, there was a network called Magrivi, which initially started as a group, a civil society group of agriculturalists, later become sponsored, funded by Habyarimana.
The Habyarimana government?
Yes.
were sponsoring
That's right.
a civil society group
Yes.
inside Congo
To kill Tutsis in North Kivu. Same as in Bukavu, Habyarimana used to pay for school constructions in Bukavu.
So why was he putting so much effort in Eastern Congo and not, let's say, in Southern Uganda?
For him, you often remember. Well, I'm sure I say often remember. You remember a story that President of Rwanda mentioned about. When they started, there was an envoy coming to tell them, look, you don't need to come to Rwanda. It's quite small. There's nothing there. That tells you a big story of how the regime that prepared genocide was very, very sophisticated in understanding how the population of Tutsis in the region. So in Eastern Congo, there were a huge population of Tutsis. In North Kivu, population of who have a huge economy, livestock, have lands. We are talking about over 50% of people in North Kivu are Rwandophones.
So you're saying basically Habyarimana literally maintained
a
the
strong
context
link
of geopolitics.
Yes.
Very strong influence.
Yes.
In Eastern Congo.
Yes.
And of course,
especially in education, educating people to get rid of Tutsis.
Okay. And
sponsoring civil society to do the same.
Did he look at it as, was he like trying to create a buffer? Like,
not necessarily. I think he wasn't as that clever to think that way, and if you can say in clever and bad way. For him, it was about seeing the people he doesn't want in Rwanda. He's seeing the images of those people elsewhere, and the same policy has to be applied. Again, we often, similar to what I was talking about with the colonialism, having governed 3 countries, Rwanda, Burundi, and Congo. We often also forget that the sociology of the region, that is so interlinked. I often argue the conflict in Eastern Congo mirrors the whole genocide rhetorics of Rwanda and Burundi. So the whole ethnicity issues.
And today, of course, you see Burundi also putting a lot of effort in Eastern Congo in terms of like now deployments. I was reading recent reports around Minembwe, and Uvira, amassing forces there. Okay, that's so. This is something that was happening even 80s in the, back so many years back.
That's right.
That's
right.
An interesting
there was a point when in North Kivu, 10,000 people. There was it's called the Kanyarwanda War. Over 10,000 people were killed, both Hutu and Tutsi. These were much more internal problems manipulated by politics, but putting all Rwandaphone together until Habyarimana, until 80s, until Habyarimana came in
and said, no,
you guys, why are you going together? There are Hutus and Tutsis. Therefore, you have to mobilize to get rid of the Tutsis. They have elites in Kinshasa, and those elites are potential threat to me. And he instigated such kind of policy.
Yeah.
And I was talking about sociology. I think we often forget that even within Habyarimana army, there was cousins who were in Congolese officials. So, I can go and have names of people who Habyarimana has had a very close friendship with Mobutu. They call themselves the brothers. So they influence each other in so many ways. So those ideas were shared. Even, making sure that he has people, he can influence people in Kinshasa.
Potentially was Mobutu seeing Habyarimana as a guarantor of peace for his regime, a guarantor for peace and security or sustainability of his regime from the context of Eastern Congo? Could it be that mutual interest and benefit
Yes.
So protect me against the Tutsi, any potential threat coming from Eastern Congo, and I will protect your interests in Eastern Congo. I'll make sure I'll suppress any rebel potential
I think that
uprisings and all.
The friendship was wider than that. There was a francophone aspect. You may remember that France invested a lot in Rwanda at that time with François Mitterrand.
Yeah.
Even his own son and Habyarimana's son. There were lots and lots. You have to remember the whole geopolitics around the francophone and anglophone. Congo was a big player within the francophone countries, and Habyarimana, even if Rwanda was not necessarily a big player at that time, he was a big player in context of a friendship with France. In such context, Rwanda was not an actor to ignore by Mobutu.
Yeah.
And again, you have to look at the background before Ruzizi was used. The Kamembe was used by mercenaries who came to support Mobutu. Kamembe was used in many ways in terms of defense. Ruzizi in terms of Kamanyola when there was a war against Mobutu. So Rwanda is the backup. At that time, it was Kayibanda.
In one of your recent posts, Doctor, I'll just pick one short part here. And you're talking about the issues around Minembwe. Also knowing that you were born in Minembwe, you grew up in Uvira, so you know that region very well. So you said, so what you said very briefly, so basically you are taking us back to 1980s, 1990s.
Yes.
And you said in the collective imagination of the DRC government-sponsored armed groups, Rwandans and Tutsi are dehumanized and perceived as immortal, impervious to physical and moral violence, incapable of experiencing thirst or hunger, and creators devoid of feelings. The government of the DRC has been rewarding the most extremist in displaying hate, and hateful speech against Rwanda or Tutsi. Conversely, anyone who dares to raise the alarm about the ongoing genocide tendencies is systematically arrested. And you, of course, talked about this parliamentary debate of 2020. There's a court that the region, that's the area around Minembwe and Uvira, the region is inhabited by foreigners who should not receive our land. And then you're saying in your post here, the idea originated in 1992 Sovereign National Conference, which introduced the concept of national details and land occupation. And of course, you go on to say how Tshisekedi, now the current president, has built on that historical phenomenon and occurrence, and now intensified, took all these things to another level. So you're saying there is a connection with the influence coming from Rwanda back 1990s, 1980s.
And I talk about in French l'ouragan de l'Ouest et l'ouragan de l'Est. So by what I mean, by that I mean, the huge wind. What do you call the huge wind coming from the sea and becoming kind of like coming like a volcano? There was 2 explosions, both related. Those related by genocide ideology.
Like hurricanes of sorts?
Yes, 2 hurricanes, yes. The first hurricane was in Kinshasa in 1990s. And the second hurricane was in Kigali, and both met in Eastern Congo. And both them, have led to such kind of genocidal killings. So what do I mean by that? The hurricane in Kinshasa was the ethnic identity crisis that was introduced in parliament. They produced a report to say that Tutsis are unwanted those languages we've been talking about earlier.
That's in 2020.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about 1990. I'll come back to 2020.
Okay.
And in 1990, by the time really the genocide that was happening here, there was already 4 years of planification of killings of Tutsis in Congo. Yes. So coming from parliament, not from barbaric armed groups. No, this coming from the government. Parliament, hours, months debating on how they have to exterminate Tutsis. So zooming to what's happening today, we're talking about planifications. That's led to what we're seeing today. In the last few years, in 2020, Tshisekedi started a systematic campaign. For me, I see it as really a leader that operated exactly how the genocide was operated, the genocide against the Tutsi was operated in 1994. So he took all the planification together, and he is in execution and implementation stage. And he provided ammunitions. He provided sophisticated ammunitions, even drones. He mobilized the groups. He had the political backup. He had hate speeches around it. He had narratives around it. And he invested in more money and sanctified state actors to execute the work. So that's what we're seeing in Minnesota.
So from what you're explaining, it suggests then that Kinshasa and even the president himself, Tshisekedi, is the center of gravity today of the genocide ideology that is that we're seeing making rounds in Congo.
Yes.
Is this correct?
That's correct. What's the danger to what's going on is how he has mobilized the whole government resources. Today, all project, I worked on infrastructure project, studying infrastructure project. Many ministries at the moment, they allocate funds toward this project of exterminating people because of who they are. Or the whole idea of war with Rwanda. War with Rwanda is not about two countries having diplomatic clashes. This is about a genocide ideology. It's about Rwanda perceived as an ethnic group. It is, they often talk about Rwanda in mobilizing people. It is a really central point that mobilize oppositions, mobilize groups. So it serves so many purposes: to access power, to maintain power, and to be supported. Because you don't have any other project, plan, vision for the country, you can only mobilize people to say, look, I will get rid of Tutsis for you, and I will fight with Rwanda.
There you have it. Dr. Alex Mvuka has just taken us through the historical context and the background to this vice of genocide ideology that continues to manifest, to raise its ugly head in the Great Lakes region. In our next part, which will be the last, Dr. Mvuka will make sense of the recent dynamics in view of the current conflict situation in Eastern Congo, and what it means to you and I, and what can be done to stem and to fight, eradicate the vice of genocide ideology from within our region.